from that kind of heart perspective of the amazing individual stories and lives that you all touch each and every day. It also allows us to really identify trends and themes. So something that you may feel that you're experiencing individually at your organization, we want to understand that to see if it's a theme that we're picking up on with other orgs as well, so that we can really figure out how we can improve from our perspective, but also how to share that information collectively with all of you as well. As I mentioned, we share this with a tremendous amount of stakeholders. Our donors love to understand what's happening within the community and within the organizations that all of you work within. So it's a way for us to really link that back together and tell that story of the work that you're doing. I will also say that it's a way for us to understand our own continuous improvement. As we set our goals for each of the impact areas and we hear back from you of what's working and what isn't working, this allows us to reset if we need to or change course if we need to in partnership with all of you. So it tells a really important story of the work to date and the way that we can actually modify our own best practices around that as well. I will also say, as we think about moving into the future of United Way and our funding here, we've been talking a lot about some of our funding constraints that we have at Greater Twin Cities United Way. We're getting very focused on the goals and the things that we want to accomplish. We do use annual reports as one of the mechanisms to understand your own organization's ability to submit reports on time in a way that are complete, that allows us to be a strong funding partner with all of you. So that will be something really important that we look at, of being able to deliver on time and a quality report back to us. The timeline in terms of this cycle is that we have officially opened the annual reports online as of January 12th. This is the second part of our training today. We will have a deadline of February 13th at 4 p.m. to submit your annual report. Tom will talk a lot about this in his presentation and remind everyone. It's always a good idea to go back and test technology. Make sure that you can still log in. Make sure that you have access to the report. Make sure that it's in working order so that we're not getting calls on the 13th that you can't submit. That sometimes happens. We understand that. But as much as possible, we do recommend logging into the system just to make sure that everything is working in the way that you thought it would. And then February and March, we will be doing in-depth review of the report. So the team here and others that weren't able to join today do a really in-depth review of the reports to understand what's working and what isn't working. In some cases, we'll need clarification, and we'll get in touch with you to talk about what you submitted, just so that we have as much understanding as possible. And then if needed, we'll give you time to really kind of reframe or clarify some of the work within the annual report to then resubmit to us. So that February to March process is when we'll be doing that. And then as of March 15, at the end of March, we'll really look for completion of those reports so we can start sharing them internally and then, again, externally. I think you'll find in this year's process we have worked very hard to simplify as much as possible. So it shouldn't be as intensive as it has been in the past years, but we'll still allow for you to tell that story. I will also say that we haven't been great in the past about reporting back out to all of you as a group about what we collected and what we learned. So expect that we'll be sharing that in a much more robust way than what we've done in the past, so that you don't feel like all of your hard work and data and information goes into the kind of United Way black hole. You'll see this in your packet, the United Way team, broken down by goal area and by operations, and then by IT. You can reach out to anyone on this list if you don't know who to contact, and they will make sure that you're directed in the right way. So this is just, you should know your manager. If you don't know your manager, let us know. We'll figure that out with you. But feel free to reach out if you have questions to this team. Again, the technology piece of it, we do have support at gtcuw.org to help answer any of those techie questions that you may have. But we're here to help, so feel free to reach out. And then what you'll be submitting is your data from January 1st, 2014 to December 31st, 2014. We're also asking that you submit your 2015 board rosters at this time. And again, the due date is 4 p.m. on February 13th to get that submitted. I also want to let you all know, and you should have received this via email, or your executive director or CEO should have received this via email. We are now working with Clifton Larson Allen for our new process, and they're working very closely with us on a few things. One is, what are the right documents to submit from your organization? Things like the board roster, things like your financials. We're really going to be thinking in depth about what makes the most sense, what information do we really need. I would say a new feature of Clifton Larson Allen's work in partnership with United Way is that we're creating dashboards a beautiful kind of one page of what we're learning by collecting all these documents from you. I think it'll be very useful with your boards. It'll be very useful with your teams, staff internally to talk about this. Managers will be using them on site visits. It's a new way of kind of looking at the overall financial health and health in general of your organization. And then we'll also be able to identify trends and themes out of this with our over 188 organizations that we fund as well. So expect more information there that comes back to you that will hopefully be a useful tool, and more to come on that. We're not asking for a lot of documents this time, as I mentioned, for this particular annual reporting. However, know that we'll communicate with you in the future about what that will be. I also want to point out on this, as we move into new request for proposals process, this is the case for education, but also the case for Safety Net, which we'll release later this year. We really will be looking for strong organizations that have a history of submitting these documents on time. So make sure that as you think about this, and if you don't know, if you have questions about it, ask us. We're usually in pretty good shape about reaching out if we don't have something, but this will be a really critical piece as you apply for future funding at United Way, that you've been submitting on time on a regular basis with the documents that we have requested. Any questions before I pass it on to Naima? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Good afternoon, everyone. How's everyone doing today? Good? Parked easy? Had a good lunch? So I am going to walk you through some of the content elements of the annual report and how you'll be filling it out. So bear with me. Don't get too bored. If you have questions, please save them toward the end. We'll be taking questions from both folks who are in the room and folks who have tuned into the webinar. So just to go back, sorry, before I begin, I wanted to take a moment to thank you all for being here. I realize that, we're all busy. It's very hectic. We have many competing priorities, and the fact that you're here shows that you are committed to submitting quality annual reports, and we really appreciate that. So I want to thank you all for being in attendance. So what's new about annual reporting this year? Well, given the timing and the fact that you'll likely be addressing similar questions to years past, we've decided to shorten the application, yay, shorten the report. And the number of narrative questions that we usually ask has been cut down. And so you'll see that it's about 3 or 4 questions, narrative questions shorter. But this will likely change in the future, so don't get too excited. But we'll likely be adding the questions that you're used to seeing in some form or another back in the future. One exception to this shortening of reports is for the jobs and training grantees. It's not that we're singling you all out to pick on you, but we want jobs and training grantees to complete a separate narrative report. Don't worry, it's not complicated. It's the same questions that you've answered before. It's just a slightly different process, and I encourage all jobs and training programs to reach out to Rachel Speck if they have any specific questions. But Tom Lance will be going over how to, do that process in a little bit more detail. So that's it. I mean, that's really the only differences that we've made. Again, given that we're going to be, that we have a few pending RFPs, we've decided to keep the reports as simple as possible this time around. So with that, I'll hop right into the elements of completing the report. So let me transition here. Do we have the Snagit PDF on here? Sorry. Should I take the link? Take it to the desktop and then open it up. All right, great. Sorry about that, folks. So the first thing that so this is a Snagit document. It's basically a document that walks you through what we are looking for in annual reports. This is available on the United Way website, and I'm sure we'll be including a link to that in our communications to you, so you'll have that. And if you look up top at the key, you'll notice that the red circles indicate actual report sections that we're pointing out to provide more guidance, and then the call-outs right here are used to provide additional context and direction in terms of what we're actually asking and what we want you to fill in terms of content. So if you look at the very first part of the report, you'll see the field that asks you to provide a descriptive name for your report. Tom will get into a little bit more detail about this, but you basically name your report. And then for the program, for the agency name, which is the little drop-down menu section here below, notice that when selecting from the drop-down menu, you need to make sure that your correct program name is chosen. What I recommend is that after you've selected your program name, you click into another field so that that prevents you from accidentally selecting another program name if you scroll. So usually when we see programs that have submitted a report under another program name, we think that it's because of such mistakes. So to prevent that, I just click elsewhere. After you've done that, pretty straightforward, you'll notice that there's a narrative question, a brief narrative question asking you to provide a description of your funded program. And here, we're really encouraging you all to be brief. Think elevator speech and just kind of a summation of what your program accomplishes. For those of you who are seasoned annual reporters, you kind of already know this drill, but it's nice to have a refresher. So just let us know if you have any additional questions around that. In the second question, you'll notice that we ask for changes in the program model or implementation over the last year. So over this year's funding cycle, if there were things that drastically changed either the way that a program runs, content that you use, for example, curricula, or changes in program locations or key staff, those are the types of things that we would like to hear about in this particular section. And additionally, I would say anything that has impacted your outcomes in a significant way, it would be good to note here. So after these kind of two short narrative questions, we have the indicators section, which we don't have the image of in this Snagit document, but I will pull one up to show you. And this looks different for each of your areas. That's why we didn't provide one image here. But I want to give you all an example. So here you see a set of indicators that a program has committed to reporting on. And you'll see one, and then the description of the indicator, and then the tiny field that asks for the number. So here it's important to note that we want you all to report actual numbers and not percentages. I know there's been a little bit of confusion around this in the past, but we're trying to move to solely numbers-based reporting, and just want you all to be aware of that as you go through and fill out your numbers and for your indicators. And then this box below, explain any variation between your proposed and actual meeting outcome indicators. What I want to note here is that it's really, really important, and my recommendation, my highly recommendation would be to go back to your funding notices and look at the baselines that you proposed to serve. So for all of the indicators, what were the numbers that the program had proposed? And this is a good way just to double check, make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of what you're reporting against. And it allows you to look at the actual program outcomes or achievements and explain any variation. I want to take a moment here to recognize that while we all want to present the best forms of our stories in annual reports, we also want to use this to understand your program's challenges in a very candid manner. So if there are targets that you haven't quite met, why haven't you met them? We're really interested in understanding what led to the numbers that you got versus the numbers you proposed. And this is true even if you exceeded your targets. So if you if you hit higher numbers, what was, why did that happen? We want to understand what's happening in your programs and how participants are being served. This is really not meant to be a source of penalty or punishment for anyone. It's really for us to undertake good kind of learning and understanding what's working and what can be improved out in the community. And you guys are closest to the work, so we really rely on your expertise to understand what's working. And so anyway, I won't belabor that point. So moving right along. That's it. The final narrative question you'll see is the story, the success story that we ask for. And this really, in order for us to have a success story that's really useful in terms of telling the story to donors and having our marketing folks use your stories, it needs to have 5 key components. First is that it needs to be tied to individuals in your programs. So what happened in a program participant, in a participant's life that you can share with us about? Again, this kind of taps into that storytelling element and really understanding what are the trials, the triumphs of your participants, their struggles. We want to understand all of that, and this is such a great opportunity to connect us to the realities of what's going on in the community. The second piece is that the story should be tied to program outcomes. So for example, if housing stability is one of your key indicators, tell us about how the participant achieved housing stability and how your program helped, right? We want to get to the core of how your program moved the participant from the point that they were at entry to the point that they are at and how they're successful. Number 3 is that it should demonstrate a change in or stability of an individual. And so again, just going back to my last note, we want to hear that element of movement in the stories as we read them. And we'd like for you all to strike a balance between the head and the heart. So as well as, sharing your program numbers, we want to see how does this tie into making a change. So the emotional heartstrings here need to be kind of tempered with the facts about how the program helped. And the final piece is the change in names of participants to protect their confidentiality. Many of our programs do a great job at this, so I don't want to belabor this point, but it's always worth mentioning that if you do decide to share a particular participant's name, just make sure you change it to address that confidentiality issue. So that was a quick run through of the content of the report. And let me get back to where I was here. So additional tips to fill out your reports. These are pretty straightforward and common sense. We want you all to aim for accuracy and quality, and we also would like for you to start the report as soon as possible. Everyone who will stand up here after me will probably also, well, it's I guess only Tom, but will drive home the point that it's better to start sooner rather than later to anticipate any glitches that the system may have, any data issues that you all are trying to work through. It's always better to start early and save often. And if you have concerns or questions, please reach out to your program managers. We are all here to help, and we'd be happy to chat with you about questions or concerns that you have. With that, I will open it up to questions.
Sorry. Thank you.
So just to confirm, there's not a financial component?
Oh, you know what? I was just thinking about that. I might have missed something.
I guess there is.
Sorry to bring, you bring up a great point. Actually, yes, I didn't scroll all the way down. See, that's a great example of what can happen if you, no, I'm just kidding. Yes, so thank you for bringing that up. Completely missed the budget section, but I would be remiss not to go over that all with you. So the 2 components, or the few components that I didn't go over with you guys, was the budget information and the demographics information. So first I'll go, just in order. here. What we want in the budget information is the total organizational budget on the top here. We often get questions around or confusion around whether we want the program budget or the organizational budget. So just to clarify, that's for the very top field, we're looking for the 2014 actual total organization budget. So just to give you kind of a line item breakdown or an explanation for some of the rows here, I'm not going to go all the way through, but just points of clarity for questions that we run into often. The very first row where it says Greater Twin Cities United Way, here we would like for you to report the actual grant amount for the previous year in your program area. So, not if you're funded across multiple areas, we would like you to just put the one area that you're filling out the report for. Also, in the box below, the row below, you'll notice that there's a space for you to record information of amounts of funding that you've received from other United Ways. So if there's another region, a United Way that's providing your program money, then that would be the space to fill that out. And then for the government grants and contracts, you'll notice that we ask for a total amount of the government grants and contracts, and then below that we ask for the number of grants and contracts, and then similar for the foundation corporate grants. And as a final note on the income piece is the other and other excluding in-kind category. Here, please use the text box to indicate income, what the other income sources are. So we really ask you to only use this box if there isn't another category that fully aligns with whatever dollar amount that you're putting in. So go ahead and check all the other categories first against the amount that you're going to enter, and then if you need to use this other category, go ahead and specify what that other is, that other source of income. So for the expense portion, similar story. Here you're just kind of itemizing the expenses for the program. So this is all program budget information, not organizational level. Just want to clarify that for both the income and the expense line item breakouts. And beneath here we have a text box where you can provide additional information that's needed to explain anything about the budget. So if there was a difference between the income and the revenue, excuse me, the income and the expenses, please explain that here. Also, if there was anything abnormal, if there are any other notes that you would like for us to know about why you underspent or overspent, please use this as your opportunity, this field right here, to make all of those notes. So with that, I'll provide you some quick guidance through the program demographic data. So here, we're looking for the total number of individuals served in this top row. And then the rest is pretty self-explanatory. You have sections on gender, age, race and ethnicity, and geographic information. And really, for all of these kind of categories, what we'd like to emphasize is and ask is that you please try to avoid large numbers in the unknown categories. We understand that sometimes it's really difficult to collect data for some participants. And if you have that, if you have a case where there is a large number of unknowns, there's an additional narrative section in the bottom of the demographics section of the report where you can add kind of explanation around that. But we ask you, if at all possible, to please decrease the amount of unknowns that you report here. And so just to move to the next section, we also ask that you provide the unduplicated count of households served. So we have the total number of households, which is the top row, and then we ask for an income breakdown. And again, please avoid reporting large numbers of unknown, especially since this is a priority population for us of 200% federal poverty guidelines and below. And here is that little text box I was talking about earlier. If you want to provide additional information and explaining the demographics and income data, you can put it right here. So the last piece, and this time it's truly the last piece because I'm scrolling down and there's no other page left, is the service delivery locations. So if you have, if you could please list all of your service delivery locations, you can, well, Tom will show you more about how to add locations, but this is just kind of where we captured that information at the tail end of the report. Now that it's all done, are there any questions? Okay, if not, I'll turn it over to Tom Lance, our guru of everything website at United Way.
So we will run through the site and the actual online application portion of it. So again, my name is Tom Lance, our IT department. Configure the online applications, help you guys with support questions during the reporting period, things like that. Just by quick show of hands, who's going to be logging into the grants portal for the first time for this reporting period? Just a few. Good. All right. So for the rest of you guys who have been through this before, the application process is pretty similar to the reporting process. So if you've been in for either an application or a report, it should look pretty much the same as you have in the past. For those of you who are new, we'll run through a couple steps that you guys need to get set up here. Real high-level steps as far as getting through the report. First, create your reporting team. Figure out who all is going to be providing information into the form. You can have multiple people at your organization access the form, provide information if you choose to do so. So figure out who's going to do that. Prepare your login. Make sure everyone has access to the system. Log in, start your report once, plug your information in there, and then there's a submit at the end just to notify us that you're all done. So those are the real high-level steps. As far as logging in, we are a Microsoft shop. We use Microsoft SharePoint for this tool, and SharePoint, Microsoft tools tend to work best together. So the system will work with Internet Explorer, Firefox, Chrome, Safari, or an iPad Safari. Internet Explorer is going to work the best. So if you run into any troubles with the things looking funny formatting, things not printing correctly, try Internet Explorer first, see if that straightens it out for you. But the rest, like I said, should work. Prepare to log in. First thing, we do need to set up an account for you, make sure it's tied to the right organization so that you see the right options on the site, historical documents, things like that. So there is a little bit of a registration process. If you have a password, if you've used the system before, you should be able to get in. Use that password that you've used in the past. If you have trouble with it, there's a forgot password option right on the login page as well. But if you know you've never been in, this URL right here on our main website, it's on the reporting page. You can go ahead and go out there, fill out the form. It's going to be your agency name, your name, email address. Yeah, existing application should be fine. Fill that out, submit it to us. We'll go ahead and get your account set up. It can take us sometimes a couple days depending upon what's going on. So don't wait until the last day before these are due to fill those out. All right. Once you fill out the form, give a couple days, like I said. Look for an email support@gtcuw.org with that subject. Anybody here know that your organization uses Google Gmail as your corporate email accounts? No? Good. All right. Gmail has a tendency to catch those in spam, so that is good. Take that email, use the password that you're sent along with your email address as your username. You can go to the login page, change that password later if you choose to. The login page is here. You can also, there will be a link to that from the annual reports page on our general website. Go there. That's going to take you to our regular dashboard. Use your email address, either your existing password or that new password that you're sent, and you will get logged in. And with that, I'm going to actually flip over to the site. We're going to back out and go to the login page. Here's that forgotten username and password. If you're not sure if you have a username and password you think you might have in the past, that will check and it'll tell you whether or not you've logged in or whether or not you have a password. So that's going to be quicker if you do have an account set up because there's an automated process to kick you off a new email with the new password. So If you think you might have an account and don't want to fill out the whole form to request a new one, forgot username and password is going to be the quickest way in. So, otherwise, I'm going to use my test account. See while I can type. All right, so step back here. So right now we're within one of the grantee sort of sub-pages. I'm going to step back to the dashboard just so we know what we will see when we log in there, which is where most people are going to land when they log in. All right. So general dashboard, welcome to the Greater Twin Cities United Way Agency dashboard. Just a couple things I'll point out. We do occasionally have announcements here on the main page in the upper right-hand corner there. Also, if you run into trouble, we have staff contacts here, Melanie and Katie in our operations department, and then our technical support as well there, both our email address and our phone number. Otherwise, what you should see then on this page is going to be dependent upon your organization. The reporting subsites should show you just the RFPs that you have reports due in. If you feel like you're missing something there or you're seeing a reporting subsite that you don't think you have a grant in, feel free to check in with us. Maybe we just need to tweak permissions that show something for your organization that for some reason isn't. But those should be all set that you will see what you are funded in and have reports due in. If you need access to like a past grant, let's say a past cycle of this grant, an older report than you're able to find through these, shoot us an email. Each site has its own different link, and we don't always display all the old ones. So we do have access to them. They're not gone. You just may not see the link to them right here. All right, so clicking here to the Hunger Food Shelves RFP subsite. All of the historical information on this RFP, the application if you filled it out online, any past reports should be on this page. So, for instance, this one, my test user here is the Catholic Charities account. We can see the application that was submitted online. We can see the 2013 annual report. And in this case, we had a training yesterday, so I completed a test version of the 2014 annual report. You would see this if you have started your report, saved a copy, and you're just coming back in later to work on it. You would see something in that annual reports library right there. It may be that you haven't started anything, that's blank. In that case, if you need to start a new one, just one time we're going to click the Start a New Report link, just the first time through. Naima mentioned that we're going to provide a name for the report. This is what we'll see on our end when we look at that library. We'll see, of course, all of the reports. So tell us your agency name, maybe your program name, just so that we can sort it out. And then for your own identification, if you want to put that it's your 2014 report, you can do that as well. So just going to give that a name there. First time through, what I recommend is just plug that name in there, choose your organization. So we're Catholic Charities here today. And then just to make sure everything is working fine for you, go ahead and save that. Make sure you get your report has been saved. If there's trouble with the file name the system didn't like, or with your account or with the library, and for some reason it wasn't saving right away, we wouldn't want you to spend half an hour keying in a whole bunch of information, then having trouble saving, and find that out afterwards and have to redo things. So first thing through, just go ahead and save your report. Once you've done that, then we can progress on down through the reports. Naima ran through most of this. I think the only additional couple things I'll point out actually. The guide that she ran through with the screenshots and the tips, things like that, we do have some of that embedded here on this click for more information on completing budget and demographics. So if you're flipping through the demographics section and you can't recall which year budget you're supposed to use, or what exactly was it they were asking for under the other United Ways section, a lot of those helpful tips you can get to right within the report. So you shouldn't have to hang on to that paper printed copy. And we can jump back to the report there. So that link is going to be available both under the budget section and then again under the demographic section. So we can jump back to both of them. One other sort of technical thing I'll point out. So we are going to ask for your total number of individuals served and then the breakdowns by gender, age, race, things like that. There is some validation to make sure that those totals add up so that we don't have 100 people under the total served and then only 50 here. If you run into messages that say there was a database validation error and numbers didn't compute, go down, check those, make sure everything adds up and equals out in the end. So that's the only real sort of validation I think that's going on in the form. And then service delivery locations. So we've got the field to enter one service delivery location. There's a little blue drop-down arrow there in the corner. If we click that, oops, we'll do this one at the bottom, either way. It's going to throw another set down below. Fill those in, add another set. You can keep on adding service delivery locations as you go. Should be pretty straightforward. Save as you go along. Don't put an hour and a half's worth of work in, try and save and find out your Wi-Fi connection dropped or you were disconnected from the system for whatever reason. Just save periodically. We put buttons throughout the form to help you with that so that, you know, as you complete a section, just go ahead and save it. If there's information entered on your computer on the form that never gets saved, we don't have any access to that. We really can't get to it. So we've had some sad stories of folks in the past who are maybe working on this remotely and their internet connection dropped off and like there's a lot of information saved, so or not saved. So learn from their mistakes and save as you go through. Once everything is entered in, you're sure you're done with it. Any colleagues that need to enter information are done with it. It's gotten the sort of okay from your executive director that it's all done. We do have a submit button both at the bottom and at the top. One time only. Once it's submitted, you won't have access to make any changes. That tells us that, hey, we're done. This is in United Way's hands now. So one time when you're done, hit that submit button, and that will tell us that we can go ahead and start reviewing. If for some reason, you know, you accidentally submit, email the support desk. We can back them out, but it's going to require, you know, a little back and forth, and it's quicker if you just keep saving as you go instead of the submit. All right, we're going to close the form. Once it's submitted, like this test I put in yesterday, you'll come back to the RFP page. You'll see the application, or see the report that you titled there. The application status, report status will say submitted. Otherwise, it would say draft here, like below. So, questions on that or any issues people have run into with the forms in the past? One person yesterday did ask a question about printing. The way that Microsoft has designed this tool isn't always the best for printing, particularly when answers get really long. It doesn't have a great way to wrap text boxes onto the next page. So if you do have trouble printing, you need the record for your files, things like that, and it's not printing out well, just shoot us an email and we can help you out with that, send you a PDF copy. Other questions? Yeah, we got a microphone here for you.
So I understand for the jobs and training grantees, there's an extra report.
Yes.
Is that, I guess you're going to go through that. And then one other thing is the notice of funding, is that available in the portal or not?
I believe, this one doesn't have any, most of the RFP subsites, particularly for some of the older grants where the application was done through our previous system, a bit farther down on the page is a historical documents or previously submitted documents section that you should see a folder with your organization's name on it. If the funding notices are out there, they'll be in those folders. So I'm going to check and see here. Yeah, shoot. My test account here isn't tied to the jobs and training, so I can't pull that one up to see if it's out there. But as far as your other question about the additional form, where you see start a new report, there's going to be two links. One link will say start a new report. The other link will say like answer the additional narrative questions. So that will bring up the additional form. It should be pretty straightforward. You'll see two different libraries, one library for the 2014 annual report, one library for the additional narrative questions. So that's the only thing that's really going to look different. The form itself is going to function the same. It'll just be like 5 narrative questions. So thank you for reminding me. I forgot to mention that one yesterday. Other questions on the form, issues people run into?
On the financial section, in the question where you ask about the organization, the first item of information that we want.
Yeah, the total organizational budget?
Yeah, you're asking for 2014 budget or 2014 actual expenses for the organization?
Is there a program manager or an operations person who, I believe it's the total organizational budget.
Okay, so that was the budget or the actual expenses? Income or expenses? Yeah.
Income, yep. So that's under the income section. So total income for 2014.
For the organization. Okay.
Sorry. Yes, it's the top one, the income, the actual number is for the organization for that fiscal year.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Other questions? Okay. All right, then just to reiterate a few tips. Again, save as you go. We don't want to lose any information, things like that. Feel free, if it's easier for you, to work in Word. We have some organizations who print out the questions, type up their responses in Word, and then copy-paste them into the form. Just know that the system won't bring over any kind of fancy formatting. So bullet points, bolding, highlighting, underlining, things like that won't carry over. It's really just a text box. So. Naima mentioned after you choose your organization from the drop-down list, best to move through the form with the scroll bars or a scroll wheel on your mouse. We've had organizations pick their name from the drop-down list and then they mouse down or they arrow down trying to arrow through the form, and that switches what organization is selected in the report drop-down there. I mentioned at the sort of outset that any staff person who's registered to the system can access the same report, can work in that together. The only thing that we mention, or the only warning we'll give you, is that it is possible for multiple staff who have the report open at the same time to overwrite each other's work. The system's not as smart as like a Google Docs where I can see the changes that you've made. So if I open a form and you open a form, you do a bunch of work, save it, and then I'll save a report that's relatively blank, I can save that relatively blank report over the work that you've done. So I'll give you an example after this of how that can happen. And then to help prevent that, when you're not actively working in the report, just close out of it. Later when you need to go back in, open up a new session, make sure things are refreshed. During the application process, we had an organization who just left the form open for 5 or 6 days, and they were surprised that they weren't able to save all of their work at the end. They lost a little bit of work going through that process. So save as you go, close out when you're not working in it. So just to reiterate, how you could save over someone's work. If Susan opens the form at 8:07 and begins filling out all of the budget and demographics information, 7 minutes later, Carl opens that same form because she followed the directions and saved it initially with just the name and organization chosen. So Susan finishes all of her demographics and budget work, saves it at 8:24. Carl was just in charge of answering the first narrative question, so he opened up what was initially a pretty blank form, fills that one narrative question out, and saves it at 8:38. At 8:38, Carl's version is all we're going to have access to. That's all we'll see, is just one narrative question that he filled out. So anything that Susan had done previously could get overwritten. So if you are going to have multiple people working in the application, we just recommend you lay out a time frame, things like that. Today I'm going to be working on it. Tomorrow you feel free to go in and do the budget, things like that. So that you don't have that possibility of overwriting each other's work. And then again, once all of your fields are completed, your internal reviews are done, your executive director approves, hit that submit button one time. You should see that it's in submitted status on the RFP page. As far as resources then, the annual reporting page on our website has a whole lot of information. This webinar is going to be recorded and available there. The PowerPoint that we're walking through here is going to be on there. We have some additional information, guides to completing annual reports. If you run into trouble or see anything that just doesn't look right, feel free to email our help desk or give us a phone call. It's a lot easier to deal with those questions up front than to have you get an hour into completing information, find out that something wasn't right, not able to save, and then we've lost a bunch of time. So don't hesitate to shoot us an email or give us a call. Any last questions, either on this or on the previous information that Naima shared? All right, so with that, we are going to wrap up. The program managers are going to be filtering around. Feel free to find them with any sort of specific questions on your area. But thanks for joining us today, and have a great day.
And for those of you listening in on the webinar, we'll be ending it right now. Thank you for tuning in.